This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview. Of course, with any of these live environment Q&As, the directors are bound by the rules of the stock exchange, but I'm sure Mike and Nick will do their very best to answer all the questions that you have. Well, first of all, Mike and Nick, thank you very much for joining us. I don't know if do you want to take a minute or two just to introduce, maybe Nick, I'll come to you as CEO. You know, how's it been? What led to the sort of the new move into the board of ECR, and how are things looking? How are things shaping up now you've had time to, a few weeks to get your feet under the desk, so to speak?
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm going to start by saying, well, you can probably hear it anyway, I'm sort of losing my voice a bit today, so you might find Michael do a wee bit more talking today than I will, but I'll keep up with the strepsils as we go through the discussion. We're 2 months in now, and we still sort of refer to ourselves as the new management team. But I think so the moment has passed where we can say we're still learning the assets and still looking into what we've got. I think we've done our homework, we've done our background. We joined in mid-September, and the way I've tended to characterise it in the past is I feel that ECR slightly lost its way. I think it's a lost connection with the investor community. And many of you will know this is a company that's been a sort of a staple small cap in many people's portfolios and many people's chat for some time. But I think our communication went a little bit astray, and you might have seen that reflected in the share price. What we've been saying consistently, and I'm sure this will come out in the conversation, is that we're blessed with an extensive portfolio of some very interesting assets. And so when I say we've lost our way, that's a communication issue. It's not a reflection of what we think we have in the ground or under the ground. And there's a job for me and Mike and the rest of the team to do to reconnect with investors, re-establish a strategy that's first of all profitable for all concerned, but also easy to understand and easy to articulate. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we go through the questions today.
Thank you very much, Nick. I'll bear that in mind if you are struggling there with the voice, and I'll make sure.
Thank you.
Mike takes the brunt of the questions. So I don't know how you would prefer to do this. I'm going to effectively...
absolutely no stranger, Mark, to rattling on and speaking to people on here. Half of the guys will know me, half won't.
Sure.
I'm more than happy to have a go at it. And look, Nick has probably worked himself into the ground because, it's been a busy 8 weeks. We're really happy about the business, the appointments, and where the company is going. And we're super grateful to be here today. And thanks for guys who are tuning in. I can see there's one or two more joining as we crack on. So whatever format you want to work on, Mark, we're open to discuss whatever subjects are willfully able to discuss, and we'll move from there forward.
Well, I guess I'll probably go through the questions. I think there's about 12. And then, like I say, it is a fairly intimate group. So at any point, if anyone does want to say anything, just I think you can just put your hand up or type in the main group, and I'll unmute you, because I think we can probably manage fairly easily having quite an open discussion here. There's not thousands of people in this. But the first question that I have that was sent in is regarding the Danglais project, and is this project considered non-core, and if yes, is the company looking to dispose of it in an orderly fashion?
So it is. Danglais is a non-core asset. It's an asset that's been of great interest not only to ECR but other people for many years. As I understand, it was. I think the value of the asset was written down historically. I think after Craig and before Andrew Haythorpe, or in and around that time. We believe that there's value to it. I think there was an initial value that sat on the book at ECR of about 2 million quid. So that was a valuation that was put on that asset a number of years ago. As I say, it was written down. It doesn't sort of stand the company anything. It sits there on sort of basic care and maintenance. Doesn't cost the company a lot of cash these days. I think historically it has done, and a disposal would be fantastic. And if we can get a couple of million quid for it, that'd be wonderful too. But realistically, in this market, we have to take a sensible approach, and that is we're not just going to put assets for the sakes of it. If we can maintain an interest and actively look to try and find a partner or a sort of disposal, then that would be the ideal route forward.
Okay, but you're not sort of actively looking at that at the moment. It's on the table.
I mean, look, the companies, as I understand it historically, so I'm speaking generically from my knowledge of ECR and feeling my way around the business since joining the company, there have been a number of active discussions around that asset. They've not progressed to a stage where the company's been in a position to make any further announcement. And we know historically it's sat on the book with a valuation of a couple of £1 million. It wouldn't be fair or reasonable for me to sit here and say, look, we're on the cusp of doing a deal for a couple of £1 million. The truth of the matter is it's difficult jurisdiction. Philippines is not easy to do business. And if we could find a joint venture or a disposal that was of interest to the business, we would very much continue to look at that and wish to advance those discussions. So it's not a case that we're doing nothing with it. We are. It doesn't sit with any value on the book, and if we could find a transaction, then of course we would like to do that. I just want to manage people's expectations with Banglei. It could be something that develops quickly, and we start to see results. And you kind of say, well, when we had this interview, you didn't really allude to the fact that a deal could be done as quickly as that. But then we could be in a year's time and still having the same conversations, Mark.
Indeed. Okay, well, thank you for that, Mike. I know that's been on the books for a long time, a very legacy project there for ECR Minerals back when, indeed,
I mean, Mike, just before we move on, I mean, that asset is, that asset had a lot of interest, and there's a lot of value attributed to that asset once upon a time. There were people that were coming in and trying to make all sorts of approaches to take that asset away from the company. It was in demand. It was of interest at that point in the company's sort of life cycle. Where we are now is quite different, and market's quite different. So for investors that believe we don't attribute any value to it on the book, that may well be fair, because it's been written down from a financial perspective. But we would like to think that there's some value in retaining an interest over a long period of time. We just simply aren't in a position to give a response or that would suggest that a deal is being done. But there have been a number of key discussions over the last 12 months.
Okay, that's good to hear. I mean, does it cost you a lot of money to keep it on the care and maintenance and maintain the licenses?
No, I mean, if it costs us a lot of money, I don't think we would want to spend a lot of money on these things.
Sure. Okay, good to know. Okay, well, the next question I have is, does the company still have an active open ballot on applications south of Creswick? If yes, what is the process to decide the eventual winner?
Well, this is a decision that's made by the mines department in that area. It's something that's been ongoing, as I understand, from 2018. This isn't an isolated situation. This is quite common and normal when there's lots of interest in an area. It goes back to the department and they start to work on making a decision. All I would say, I mean, look, Nick and I don't want to keep leaning on this lamppost of saying we're new to the job, but this is something that was happening 4 years ago, and it's most definitely not in the forefront of our daily discussion. However, if we look at Fosterville South and that area, that was there was some contention about that particular area as well, and it took them about 5 years to get to a decision. They guide it can take 3 to 5 years, generally due to staffing issues and just not being able to facilitate these types of, disputes over who should get the rights over a tenement area. This has been ongoing for 4 years. The guidance is 3 to 5. You can make of that what you will. We're very much interested in the area. We understand that there've been some developments at the mine at Ballarat. It's changed ownership since 2018. And that in itself is currently, I believe, there's a private Chinese company that own the Ballarat mine, and of course it's been mined for about 20 years plus. And I think that's why this area has been of interest historically to the company and to our peers, based on the fact that that ground's been that's been developed commercially, so historically. So I guess that the first few questions coming out appear a little bit wishy-washy, but we're discussing a legacy of a business or things that are very much in the rearview mirror of the company. That's not to say that we don't have an interest, and it's certainly not to say that we don't wish to try and make the best of those particular assets, but they're about a full answer to the questions that we can give, unfortunately, Mark.
Sure. Okay, no problem. What about when it comes to the drill rigs that the company has ownership of? Are there any plans to sell them, to lease them, or to use them for campaigns?
I mean, look, we've stated numerous times, both Nick and I, in interviews, that we've got a number of assets that sit within the inventory of the business. Those assets, the property is currently for sale, so people can go out there and find that. That'll be in the public domain. We have a multi-purpose drill rig, which is also being entered into auctions for sale. And we've got a very heavy piece of plant and equipment, which is an excavator, and that's also been through an auction and not yet sold. We've had interest, we've had bids on the items, not quite met our expectations. We've had some early stage discussions about potential to lease those items, and that again will update the market as and when we can. We think that there's the value of these assets is quite substantial. We're not in a position where we want to, go through a fire sale or dispose of the assets on peppercorn terms. We're in a relatively good position right now. There's lots of interest, and as you know, activity is increasing quite substantially within the area where these drill rig and excavator are sitting. So we're pretty confident that a deal will be done. And to be clear, it's not just a disposal that we're looking at here. If the right sort of lease agreement was presented to us, we would take it. And if there was need for us to get our equipment out in the field, then we've got access to it. So,
okay.
Yeah, that's currently where we are with the inventory of kit.
Great. Okay. Well, I know your focus at the moment is on Lulworth, which we'll come on to in a moment, but let's just talk a little bit on Baillieston there. Does the company have any plans to drill here again, or are you looking for perhaps a joint venture, given some of the recent interest in the area?
Yeah, I mean, Nick, do you want to jump in? I mean, I don't want to kind of dominate the
Yeah, no, I absolutely can. I mean, I'll answer questions sort of maybe more widely, Mark. As with any new management team that comes in to a business, we've generated quite a lot of interest. We've had quite a lot of conversations with neighbours and other operators in either sort of complementary areas or sort of very near localities. And it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing is to sort of put ourselves about a bit and understand what the opportunities are nearby. I said at the start, we're blessed with a wide portfolio of assets, and just as we announced a few days back, we're going to fully explore and fully examine the assets within reasonable commercial bounds. So I think the message to investors is, yes, everything we've got, they should expect some form of activity. Now, sometimes that might be desktop activity, sometimes it might be activity on the ground, and sometimes it might be activity along the lines of working with neighbours or nearby interested parties. So, a slightly sort of wider answer than perhaps the question dictated, but it is a clear part of our strategy to get the best out of the assets we've got for the best value. And Mike spoke a moment ago about the capital assets we've got. We're not in the business of owning capital assets. We'll get value out of them, whether that's a sale or a lease. But ultimately, what we want to do is to generate value from what we have in the ground. And so, the message is expect a wide approach to that strategy as we determine where the best use of our funds will be.
Okay. And just thinking, of course, you will be going through, and investors can expect news on every project. But are you potentially looking to add other projects to the portfolio or the license areas, or is that not something you're thinking about at the moment?
Well, we have already. I mean, we've added Condapringa a month or so back. So that's maybe an indication of our thinking. We also subsequently decided not to proceed with the Hurricane project. Again, it comes back to what I said about getting the best value out of the assets we've got. And if that means extending our footprint, if that means taking on new projects, that's very much on the table. If it means examining further what we've got, I mean, that's absolutely on the table. I mean, the first thing you do is you look at what you've got in the house before you start expanding into the garden. So yeah, I think that is a strategy that again investors should expect us to continue to examine. I'm not going to promise we're going to add new license areas every few months, but I can promise that we will continually examine opportunities in our neighbourhood.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, let's move on to some other questions then. I've got a question here regarding Victoria, I think. So this is question 4 on my list. Does the company still have the operational centre in Victoria where all the core analysis was done?
Yes, we do. Is the short answer, and it still performs a function as an office and a storage facility for the core that we have from previous works.
Okay.
It's probably worth mentioning at this point as well that the kit and the inventory we had is a byproduct of a company that had a market capitalization of 5 times, 10 times higher than the current valuation. They had, I think, on a fully diluted basis, access to capital of £10 million back then. So they built up quite a hefty inventory. That's been scaled back quite substantially as the business has slowed down. COVID operations have slowed right up. The death of Craig and management changes, and this, we're left with this equipment. We have a yard. The yard was being used back in the heyday, if you will. A portion of that has been leased out in order to keep our overheads down to an absolute minimum. And the equipment, as much as we'd like to sit on all of these things, as Nick says, we're not in the game of building sort of a heavy plant business. We can go out there and find contractors to do the job, and they can carry all the cost of maintenance and having big yards and teams, and it's not the business that we're in. But nonetheless, it just gives some, hopefully, explanation to shareholders as to why we have a rig that we perhaps don't appear to be using. And it's about the utility of the equipment. There are certain horses for courses is a very simple phrase that I would use, and hopefully you can understand that one that goes over the sticks isn't the same horse that goes and races around the 6 furlong sprint. So we have the equipment. We can't always necessarily use it all of the time, and that's why we perhaps go out there and look at bringing in drilling contractors. I simply answer that question because I've seen it posted in the public domain. People saying, why are we talking to drill contractors? So hopefully that gives an explanation to that.
Indeed. Okay. And just thinking on Creswick as well, then what is the technical strategy that the company is following to unlock value in Creswick?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've done a lot of work around Creswick, and there's been a lot of discussion about the returning to Victoria, the reanalyzing data, even to the point of people questioning the integrity or, in fact, the knowledge and experience of the technical director of the business. So our view was to take a step back, analyze all of that data, and to seek some additional professional opinion. And that's not because we have any doubts about the technical director's capacity or capability, but more so, as with all of these things, just there's been such a sort of time lapse that since we've been active in Victoria, bringing in another set of eyes from a guy who's drilled in sort of 3 different continents, we thought was useful, both from a technical perspective, but also for us as new management coming in to really understand that the opinion that we've got is a solid one. And our strategy to unlocking the value in Victoria is to go back and to advance the technical knowledge and footprint for ECR, and that can really only happen from drilling activity. And, this is why we put an RNS out recently to state that it's our intention, where possible, to get back out in the field and drill. And we understand that's the kind of language that investors want to see and hear. And whilst there may be some people who have got some sort of skepticism because of the bygone years with Victoria, we hope that's been diluted a little bit, and people are encouraged by the activity that not only we see from Fosterville and the Fosterville mine, which isn't a million miles from where we're operating here, but also the recent activity from Southern Cross Gold and the incredible announcements that the company have released there. Absolutely breathtaking. And now we're aware that Falcon Metals and Nova Resources are out in the field drilling too. So the question isn't, are we sort of a little bit crazy returning to Victoria? I think if we are, then so are all of these other companies. And if you'd have believed it, the results that we're seeing from Southern Cross Gold in particular have been incredible. So I think based on the work that we've done historically, lots of people invested for Victoria, not necessarily Queensland back in 2018, 19 and 20. Did we give a fair account of ourselves over the last couple of years? I don't know. And I think some of that, it's been difficult jurisdiction. There are a lot of constraints for people getting out in the field and doing any work or even accessing Victoria. It was, when the world opened up, Victoria was particularly difficult to enter. So that meant that, advancing business has taken quite a long time to get going again. That's where we are right now, Mark, and we think that to go out there to have a really good look at the assets and the technical work that we've done today, bring in some additional opinion is really important, and that's led us to believe we should go back and have another bite at the cherry.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Lulworth then, because I know you have plans there, but what are the steps required to have the targets drill ready to get going and get that drill turning?
Well, you and I spoke in an interview recently, and that I think the D word was the phrase that we used. And look, we've still got data coming in from Lulworth. Adam Jones in a recent interview has already talked about he believes that there are already targets at Lulworth that we could look at. But to get to that sort of target generation stage, we need all of the data, and this data's still coming in. So we had an announcement within the last few trading days. We expect that there will be more announcements for work that we've completed out in the field. And once we've got that, we'll go through the target generation stage. We already have targets. So it's about ranking those targets now. Once we've generated the targets and we think we've already got places of interest, we need to then rank them. And that can't happen until we get all of the data in. So, the data's still coming. We believe that we have areas of great interest that we can target immediately, but we need to just sort of generate and rank all of these potential areas before we finalize, where we're going to go drilling and at what point. But the fact of the matter is we intend to get out in the field, and if we have the capacity, we'll do as much drilling as is absolutely necessary. I mean, we've had a great sort of string of results coming out of Lulworth. It's really shaping up quite nicely. Are we getting value recognition for it? I'm sure lots of companies in our position feel the same way. We don't believe that we're getting fair value, but we're not in a position to dictate the valuation. The market dictates valuations, and there are many companies like ours and other, and much bigger ones that are, particularly frustrated by the current market conditions. So all we can do is keep giving people a bang for the buck, getting the work done, getting the news out there, and hopefully people will process that and decide that we're doing the right things. We certainly believe we are.
Okay. Well, the final sort of part of everything that's going on in ECR Minerals with the project is, of course, the Mercator gold situation, that famous sort of 66 million Aussie dollar tax loss that's been on the books, I think, for a very long time, and it's not ever really been sort of exploited. Again, I mean, is this something you truly believe can, will you get this over the line? Will you be the board to actually make use of this vehicle, do you think?
I think what we can say is that it's something that we examined fairly early on. I mean, as you say, it's a big number. It stands out pretty clearly when you have a look at the company. So we've taken some advice on how Australian tax losses can be utilised. Rather encouragingly, that the process is not at all dissimilar to how it works over in the UK. So yes is the short answer. It's a significant or potentially significant part of the company's value, and it is an area we'll look to explore. How we go about it. Whether it's a case of selling tax losses, whether it's a case of utilising them in our own business, doing something in between, so through a joint venture, for example. There's a number of different options, and really very much like Mike was talking about on drilling plans. What people should expect from us is conservative financial management. We're not going to rush into anything. We're not going to do anything daft. We're going to look at all the different options and find a way to get best value for what we have, and that's whether we're selling a rig or whether we're looking to utilise tax losses. But as I say, it stands out sort of clear and proud across the company's value, and we would be remiss not to be looking at different options.
Okay, good. Well, go on, Mike.
The figure's $73.5 million actually dollars. And when we've spoke to internally and externally about being able to utilise them, it's a possibility. So the question is it possible? Yes, it is. And are you going to be the board that's able to utilise them? Well, if we go out and have a fantastically large discovery, then we don't really have to be too clever about it. We've got the losses. We get to utilise them. We're the company that's now in production, and we're going to be able to produce on extremely competitive terms, and that's going to be fantastic for us. But in the event that there's another way for us to, partner, dispose, joint venture, whatever it might be, if there's another way to utilise the tax losses, we're gonna look to explore them and investigate that as much as we possibly can. But let's not forget, there are plenty of ways to skin a cat. And I'm sure this has been discussed. In fact, I know it's been discussed historically when Paul Johnson was involved with the company, and he was particularly confident too that he could find a way to utilise these tax losses. But the best way would be a simple discovery. That would mean that we're in the driving seat, and tax losses are going to start being utilised, and that's going to be extremely beneficial for us as a business. In the event that that's not the case and something else comes up, yes. If there's continuity within the business, we can utilise them, and that's the guidance that we've had.
Okay. Well, yes, of course, that big discovery would be the obvious route to use them, and of course, a very good upside for shareholders there. But of course, it's always risky in this game, and I know that the board have decided to not take their salary, not take any cash out of the business, taking shares, but it is aligned with shareholders. And Mike, you were very clear on an interview we did before that you will only be rewarded when shareholders are rewarded. So is that still the mantra? And I mean, at what point do you sort of say, well, we gave it a good go and it's not working out, guys?
Well, look, I think it's the time to say we've given it a good go and it's not working out, guys, is when things aren't performing particularly well. We raised £580,000. And the shares have traded at a premium to that level since we raised the money, which is quite unusual for lots and lots of companies out there. Small cap companies are struggling to keep their heads above water when they raise cash. The price recalibrates, and often it trades at a big discount. So right now, I feel quite proud of the fact that we've traded at a premium. It's only a small premium currently. We have seen the shares trading as high as 0.35, and that would suggest that the market at that point in time believed that we had the capacity and capability of taking the business forward. And we would hope that we can reward investors for supporting us, within the role, within the business. And every single shareholder that reaches out to me and says, I bought shares in the business, I can't give them any guarantees that we're going to have a huge discovery and utilise the $73.5 million or any other guarantee. The only guarantee I can give is that I'm going to put 110% into it. You'll get a bang for your buck, and I'll work a lot harder than most of the people that are out there in this game. And I've been around this market a long time, and I know what the work rate's like. And the thing that I get, great enthusiasm out of is working with Nick, because he's got probably more so a work ethic that's in line with my own. And we've taken a very different decision on being remunerated the way that we've been remunerated. So, yeah, we will continue on with this path, and it's been fantastic that the board, I don't think historically this has ever happened, that the entire board have elected for what will be 6 months not to be remunerated and to take shares. So clearly they also see value in the equity at the price that it's going to be issued. So, I think that's a good place to be. I think we've been particularly fair. Some people have said, well, you set the bar a little bit low, so isn't it easy? What they're forgetting is that in the next quarter, we will recalibrate the price that the shares will be issued at in the future to the 14-day volume weighted average. So if the shares are trading at a penny, then it'll be a 14 over a period of time. Then it'll be a 14-day volume weighted average. Or if we issue any more equity, it'll be recalibrated to that price. Now, let's assume that that's at a premium and not at a discount, because if it's at a discount to the last round, well, we won't have been paid. And I don't think Nick or I want to do this job for free as much as we enjoy it.
Mark, just to add to what Mike was saying, I mean, and to link back to what I said at the start, I mean, we think one of the opportunities with ECR is it's lost its way with investors. It's sort of lost communication with the market, and it has a very extensive portfolio of assets. And those are just empty words unless we're prepared to put our money where our mouth is. And so I think to do anything other than saying we'll be remunerated in line with the share price performance, I think would have been disingenuous for the two of us. Yeah, and as Mike says, we're different people, but we work very well together, and we have I would say, a complementary skill set. And the fact that the other members of the board have followed us in swapping their cash salary for shares, I think it's terrific, but hopefully also an endorsement of what they also believe is the opportunity for the company.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that, both of you. So there's just about 2 or 3 questions left here. The first one I have is regarding 35 Brewing Lane. What are the plans for this property? It was meant to be, was it sort of a base for exploration activities? But what's the plans? Is it on the market?
Yeah, it's on the market.
Right.
We referred to it a little bit earlier on. It's on the market. People can go out there and find it in the public domain. It was I believe, a property that was bought during under Craig's stewardship, and it was bought to make access very easy for ECR around that time. I don't believe that's an ongoing issue. There's 20 acres of land there, as I understand. So apologies if the size is slightly wrong, but that's as I understood it. And it's out there on the market, as is the drill rig, the heavy plant and excavator. Mark, just one other thing as well. I don't want to go back to the questions that I've already covered, but when we're talking about the board, I see quite a lot of unpleasant comments about the board of directors, and at this point, I just wanted to kind of put it to bed and to rest. I can't speak for Nick. I can only speak for myself. I'm not going to come on here and start sort of bashing the performance of the chairman, the independent director, the non-exec director, or the technical director of the business. I see other people doing that, and I think it's unfair. They seem to think that people are being remunerated unfairly. What I would say to you is, if you go out, and I've looked at a lot of these businesses and how much directors get paid within companies, there's nobody in this company that's getting overpaid. Absolutely nobody. When I hear people say the technical director's getting paid a small fortune, and for what? Guys traveling thousands of miles to go and spend weeks in the field living in a tent. Nobody's paying expensive first-class flight tickets. Nobody's putting them up in 4- and 5-star hotels. And, it's the rate of pay that's being paid is in line with what's expected for the job that's being done. So nobody's taking the mick. And the board of directors, we probably one of the cheapest in the market right now, because nobody's being paid a fee in cash, only in shares, which, as you're aware, we can't dispose of those shares whilst directors of the business or involved within the inner mechanics of the business. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to sort of put it out there that the cost of ECR is particularly cheap, and the work that we get out of the board for the cost is it's incredible. It's incredible, and I think it's unfair when people are frustrated that they channel their anger at sort of historical management. Somehow think that Nick and I are going to come in and agree with those shareholders and say, yeah, let's clear the lot of them out. We've all got a job to do. Whenever there's a point people don't think they're getting any value out of me, then they're welcome to show me the door. And I think if we ever thought there was people within the business that weren't able to offer value, there's not a chance that Nick and I would sit by and just allow people to take a free ticket while we're working our conkers off.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for that, Mike. So there's a couple of questions, and we'll see if anyone wants. We can have an open discussion maybe. But someone was asking, any idea who the pesky seller is anytime 0.25 has reached the sales rumble in?
Drives me insane, that. So I think I know who asked the question as well. There's somebody who's supported the company, who's put some money in, who's bought the shares out in the market, if I'm right. And yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. So each Friday, I get the shareholder register. Nick and I discuss this quite often, and we look and we see these comments in the public domain where folks will say, "Hey, that's those sticky friends of yours are all selling the shares in the business, but we know where those shares are allocated to, and when you look at the shareholder register, we can see if they're there or not. And in many cases, the shares are still where they were. But what we have found is that there've been a lot of active buyers, and sort of whether they're small family offices, professional investors, whether they're small sort of punt funds in small cap businesses. And they're holding shares in certain accounts. And there's been one account in particular where there's been a lot of shares accumulated and disposed of during this period of time. And those shares appear to get purchased around this level, around 0.221. And when the shares rally to sort of 2.26, we see a flood of stock coming out. The explanation is, from the share register analysis, is it's simply people who are taking advantage of the improved liquidity within the stock. Since Nick and I joined the company, we've probably traded £1 million since we joined the business, and I share the frustrations. We're putting some great news out, and the activity of trading, which is what a market is designed for, believe it or not, has been locking us into this range. There's not a lot we can do about that except continue on with the job that we have been appointed to do. And eventually, when that trading range is breached, then we'll go into another trading range. Nick and I can't spend all day spending too much time worrying about where we are. We have to look at where we think we're going to be in 3 months' time, 6 months' time. But we definitely share the frustration of investors who are hopeful every time that the shares rally that we're gonna go on and get back to better times. And we've certainly felt the wind in our sails. There've been a few false sort of starts and moves, but I'm fully anticipate with the direction that the business is going in that things will improve in the not too distant future. But again, that's down to markets, Mark, and we simply are not the market. We're just a component of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's not much you can do, is there, until this particular seller is done, I suppose.
Yeah, but there's not a seller. That this is the point: is that the seller is the buyer. So again, we're not here to kind of talk shareholder share register analysis. I think there's actually a way that people can access that if they really wanted to. But we don't have a person that's selling because they were participants in the subscription. From my understanding, the same people that are buying and the same people that are selling, and the buying and selling within that trading range. And we just simply have to focus on delivering sufficient news that when the stock's ready to move, or the news is such it stimulates the market, that the seller doesn't have a position that they're able to take advantage of it. We can't micromanage people who are trading the shares in the business. It's just not our job to do that either, to be frank.
Yeah.
But if we continue delivering solid updates and demonstrating that the foundations of the business are strengthening, then I think it's inevitable that there'll be some recognition for that. And likewise, if we disappoint the market and we don't deliver, then that also should be a case where it's reflective of where we are as a business. But right now, I think we're doing really, really well. We're moving the business forward as quickly as we can, and we're making changes as fast as physically possible, and a lot quicker, as I say, than many companies that I've looked at over the last 15, 20 years.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Well, the last question I have here is regarding, is the company considering a sort of a name change or a potential rebrand?
It's not something that's on the agenda. There's a heap of different things we need to be focusing on, and although ECR is a company that's been around for a long time, and its history has been quite different in the past to what it is now, but it's a name that resonates with people, and so no, I don't think we're in any hurry to change the name or the colours or anything along those lines. I think there's more important things to do to generate value.
Well, yes, indeed, but you're right. It has been around for a long time. Lots of people know the name. In fact, it was my very first mining exploration stock that I ever bought way back in, I don't know, 2013, I think. Yeah, 2013, 2012, around that time. So yes, it's definitely been around for a long time. I mean, yeah, it's always nice to see a new fresh board and fresh energy. I like the fact that you're aligning with shareholders in terms of the remuneration there. If I was to sort of say, and I know this is a tough question, but if you what sort of maybe piques your interest most in the projects? What excites you, or what could be the sort of the perhaps the near-term catalyst here to sort of really reinvigorate the fortunes, let's say, of ECR Minerals? I don't know which one of you wants to try and answer that one. Go on, Mike.
Well, I'm happy to go first. The company's been around. I mean, I misquoted this actually in a chat that you and I had. I said 2014. I meant 2004 because I'd said it was 19 years. The company's been around 19 years, since 2004. It's gone through lots of different guises and changes and management changes, and it's gone from artisanal operations, gold operations in Argentina, to where we are today, over to the Philippines. Truth of the matter is what excites people is and it's excited people for hundreds, if not thousands of years, when people pull these little yellow nuggets out of the ground. And Gollum became particularly popular in Harry Potter, was it? Or was it Lord of the Rings? Is that
Lord of the Rings?
The little guy?
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings. Yeah. So I think that resonates with people. When you see value that can come straight out the ground, it excites people, and we're in that business of wanting to get excited, and that's what exploration does. And it disappoints people, it disappoints investors and management teams, along the way and on the journey. And I think Victoria in particular has been a little bit depressed for a couple of years. There's a lot of excitement around Fosterville South, and people forget the asset that one of the assets that Fosterville South floated on was ECR's non-core asset. Now, again, we discussed this. Don't want to sort of think about how red-faced certain management may have felt, historical management, because they're not here anymore to defend themselves, but they must have felt pretty sick that they disposed of an asset for $500,000 that ended up as a flagship IPO at 40 million quid, trading up to 100 million quid. The fact of the matter is these assets were introduced to the business who worked closely with a well-known, notorious geologist in Australia who was very confident about the assets that we've got. And the non-core one went off into Fosterville South, and there was a long period of time where there was very little happening. But when you look at the numbers of the Fosterville mine and what it spits out, I think it's got a market cap. I mean, in fact, you do some analysis when you interviewed me once. Is their market cap's billions and billions of dollars, and they generate billions or $500 million a year from that operation, as I understand it. So that's what excites people. We want to see. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
So I think it was my other phone ringing. But what I was going to say, Mark, in response to your question is, I think what's interesting about ECR is there's an element of unfinished business, and that's what comes down to the breadth of the portfolio. And as Mike says, I think there's a lot of unrealized opportunity. And again, we be careless of us to make some promises or guarantees, other than to say what we can promise and what we can guarantee is conservative financial management and a disciplined approach to examining what we have, both what we have now and also going back to one of the other questions, what may come in our path. So I think there's terrific opportunity here, perhaps more so than I've seen sort of elsewhere in our sort of peer group of sort of small cap miners. Some of the work has been done by our predecessors, but a bit corny. But in some ways, the best is yet to come. And I think with taking, for example, what we're doing in Victoria, and we've used the phrase going back to Victoria, going back and re-examining what we have in the portfolio to make sure that we have brought every possible valuable opportunity out of that project. And the same will apply elsewhere across the portfolio as well. This is what we do, and as Mike says, the sheer excitement of that yellow nugget coming out of the ground. That's what we're here for. But we're only going to get to that if we're disciplined, if we're conservative, and that's the opportunity. There's unfinished business.
Okay, unfinished business. Well, I'd like to just invite anyone if they would like to speak in the group here. It is an open discussion. You can put your hand up and we'll unmute you, or allow you to unmute yourself, and you can chat away to the guys while they're here. But if there's not any questions here, then we can perhaps consider everything covered. I mean, just thinking on pulling those little yellow pieces of metal out of the ground, are you looking to get the drills turning early next year, or do you not want to put a date on it yet?
No, I think we want to get the drills moving as soon as possible, and with additional to the conversation that you and I last had about Lulworth, we've actually indicated to the market, Mark, that we'd like to get back to Victoria. There are a few things that are required. There'll be an additional update as soon as we possibly can.
Okay.
We'd like to get out there as soon as realistically possible, and that's where this is where we are as a business. It's not just about getting the rigs out. It's not just about doing the work. There's a process to follow. We cannot, you can't put the cart before the horse. It doesn't work. But we're confident now within the business that we've got assets that we can go out and put the drill in the ground and seek some value. And just to go back to sort of Fosterville and the history of ownership of these types of operations, I went and had a conversation with the guys behind Kirkland Lake Gold. Now, those guys had a huge amount of success, and sort of questions I was asking those guys is, how did you maintain, how did you sort of maintain that fortuitous nature of disappointment and continuing on with assets that have already disappointed people? That these assets are often people don't hit first time round. This is like standing at the wicket and hitting a defensive shot and watching the wicket fall, and just being patient enough for that opportunity to come for you to get that home run. And of course, when it comes, that's all people focus on, and people have not had a lot of reason to focus for quite some time. But I believe the announcements from Southern Cross Gold, and they seem to be stacking up. They get me interested. They get me excited. So it's not just little nuggets of yellow metal. It's the fact of our peers now are starting to have some great success in the announcements that they're making, and there's absolutely no reason why that can't be replicated if we follow the process and we get the drill in the ground. I mean, if there's any questions, I'll shut up.
Well, no, thank you, Mike. I don't think there are. I can't see anyone sort of waving at me saying they'd like to ask questions. Maybe I do see some sort of familiar investors in this group here. Maybe they will come down, and I know you're at Mines and Money or resourcing tomorrow by Mines and Money, which is next week, and I will be there also. So I get to meet you in person for the first time, which would be nice, and of course you, Nick, as well. So if anyone does have any questions, either let the ECR guys know or let us know at Stopbox.
You put an announcement, or put out a tweet today to with a link that people can access tickets to come along to the event. They can come along and see us, and we'd love to or would like to meet as many investors as we possibly can. And we anticipate, or I certainly do, that we'll be busy networking, speaking to people. A couple of guys have come back to us and said, look, can't make the event, but would love to catch you for a coffee or a pint of beer after the event, and we'll entertain everybody and anybody that wants to discuss the company. But that link takes you through to the event, and there are a lot of other companies there. Click the link, get a ticket. If you want to come and say hi to us, great. We'll be we'll be made up to sort of shake your hand and talk you through the business. But if you want to turn up to the event and you have no interest in ECR Minerals, feel free to do so. So the link's there on our social media page, and you can click that and get yourself a ticket and come along.
Great stuff. Well, I look forward to seeing you next week, Mike. I'm sure I'll have some other questions for you. But for now, thank you very much, both of you, Nick Tulloch and Mike Whitlow there from ECR, for your time today. I hope the people listening in have found that useful. And like you say, bring back the focus to ECR, and you're excited about your peers having success there. So, as you said quite clearly, Mike, will be judged on your performance. So, yeah, I continue to watch the ECR story develop with excitement.
Mark, I mean, just before we call it a day, and I sense that's where we're going right now, there's been, again, some public comments about this particular subject of our peers and, communicating with those peers. One of the shareholders or investors have made a comment along the lines of, can we swap Adam with the geologist from Southern Cross? Lots of these guys speak to each other. They know the geology really, really well. They know what they're doing. Lots of companies speak to each other. The opportunities come when you're in a strong position to sit around the table with knowledge of your asset and with a good, good corporate structure, and that's what we're trying to do as a business. So, we'll entertain lots of discussions, conversations, and technical debate. But at the same time, there's a minimum standard of what's required to get the most out of any sort of collaboration. And I think that is what Nick and I and the team are trying to achieve at this point.
Okay. Well, like I say, thank you very much, both of you, for your time today. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. The recording will be out in the next couple of days.
Terrific. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for arranging it. And thank you for all of those who've attended.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like, or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stopboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.